Like we always do about this time.
You're now in tune with the best podcast show online. Welcome to the Fantastically Dunn Show, the realest show you ever heard. Straight truth, no chaser. Without further ado, I introduce to you your master of ceremonies for the evening, Sonny Dunn Smith.
Yes. Welcome to the Fantastically Dunn Show. I'm your host, Sonny Dunn Smith, and today is
Sum It Up Friday exclusive.
That's right, family. Today is Sum It Up Friday, and today's show topic, we're going to discuss don't let entertainers fool you. Most of them aren't rich. That's what we're going to discuss. The smoke screens that oftentimes we see where, it seems like all the entertainers are rich and they're just balling out of control and they're just living unbelievable lives. But we're going to break down the real today. The real to the youth of why everybody doesn't need to be a rapper. Everybody doesn't need to be an actor or, anything like that to be successful. We got a million ways to get it, family. Literally. And so we're going to break some of that down today on today's episode and kind of explain what we do need more of. We don't need more rappers. We need better rappers. We don't need more actors. We need better roles. We need better films. This is what we need. So we're going to break that down today, all the way down. And we're going to get into some real live, good conversation. That's what we need. That's what we need right now. We need really, really good conversation. So without any hesitation, let's get right into today's topic. Don't let entertainers fool you. Most of them aren't rich. Now, kind of starting from the top of this subject, far too often in music, mostly in hip-hop music, let's face it. Most rappers, they depict themselves, in huge mansions with 15 cars, women everywhere, jewelry, they're throwing money. I've even seen people burning money. You see people throwing money everywhere. So what should be our issue with this? Our issue with this should be what is depicted in you guys, to the young people, to the youth. It's basically insinuating that to be hugely successful in this life, all you have to do is learn how to rhyme words together, be a rapper, or at a higher extent, be an actor, be in movies. That's the road to riches and diamond rings. But the truth and the reality is most artists, most musicians, when they first sign their deals, especially today, they're signing 360 deals. Now, what is a 360 deal? A 360 deal is essentially, to break it down quite quickly, is where an artist signs to a label, which is a record company. That record company agrees to produce, manufacture, and distribute that artist's recorded works. Now, what they also agree to do is to promote and market that artist in many different ways. So one of the ways is they're going to pay for touring. The other way is they're going to handle and pay for merchandising. The other way is they're going to handle and curate online content. They're going to get the artist seen, on television shows and magazines. The list goes on. They're going to really push this artist, the machine, the building. Which inside the building, people say the machine, but they're actually talking about people. So essentially, that's what's going to happen in a 360 deal. Now, in return for them doing all of that, what they're going to want is they're going to want to get money off of everything that artist does, basically. That's what it boils down to. Everything that artist does, that label wants to partake in the revenue stream, whatever they may be. So that means if the artist is selling t-shirts, they want a certain percentage of that. If the artist is selling tickets at a concert or live venue, they want a percentage of that. So when you break all of that down, and the artist is pretty much the nucleus of how everyone gets paid, and everyone gets paid before the artist. So in reality, when you really break down even a platinum selling artist, or double or triple, oftentimes they're not really making any money off that album. The majority of their money is going to be generated from live shows and endorsements. That's the majority of where the revenue is going to be generated. But the issue today is that, again, a lot of artists are signing 360 deals, and it used to be a time where an artist pretty much, they knew that they weren't going to make any real money off of the music. So they were able to then go into touring and get endorsements, and that's how a lot of times, they were able to maintain. But today the 360 deal has kind of like really destroyed that. That type of deal doesn't even really exist anymore. In terms of an artist being able to parlay side ventures, that really doesn't exist anymore. Now, what you do have is what they call vanity labels, okay? And what that is that's where an artist will pretty much come into a business with a record company, and basically what they'll be saying is I'm already signed to my own company or my own label, and you're gonna have to do the deal not with me, but with my label. And usually it's some type of venture deal done in that arrangement, and sometimes they're able to cut 50-50, they're able to do 60-40s, some even claim that they've done 80-20s, as in the case with Master P. So without seeing, the actual contracts, obviously it's no way to really know, but those deals they've been done before. Now, today they don't really exist. Because today what the label will do is they'll do a venture deal with a label, but they're putting basically their accounting practices either way. The accounting practices are going to make it to where it's favoring the label. So with that being the case, usually the artist is going to lose. That's what it's going to basically, always boil down to. Because again, remember, keep in mind, the artist is the last to be paid. The artist is always the last person to be paid. So you have managers, you have lawyers, you have staff for that artist. Oftentimes, especially if the artist has their own label, they have other artists that they are incurring expenses for. So, all that has to be paid. Somebody has to pay all that. And it's definitely not going to be the label, the mother label. So if you're an artist signed to an independent label, everybody in that, all the staff, all of the artists that sign to the independent label, all of them are going to be dependent upon that artist, the one that's selling, the 4 million records and generating the revenue. So everyone at the end of the day is pretty much dependent on what this artist does. That's both buildings really, because the mother label is, they're concerned with obviously generating income for this artist so that they can get theirs off the top. They're the first ones to be paid because ultimately they're the ones that made the initial investment. So they're always gonna position themselves in that way. So what we're seeing in videos on TV and things of that nature, what we're actually seeing is the label actually funding these music videos, and basically what they're doing is they're creating a perception. And let's face it, in the world we live in today, perception is everything. Perception creates reality and not the other way around. So most people believe what they see, hear. That's just what people do, And so an artist in reality could be making, after taxes, less than $40,000 a year after expenses and taxes and all of that. But their lifestyle will make it seem like they're a multimillionaire. Because why? Because they have a multi-million-dollar company behind them that's marketing, promoting, propping them up for the purpose of investing and making revenue. So that's pretty much what the music business is. When you break it down, beyond the lights and TV and all that, that's basically what you're dealing with at the end of the day. You're going to be dealing with a lot of artists that are signed, being promoted and marketed on a massive scale that don't have access to a lot of capital at all. And they're pretty much, they're getting by on their fame. So a lot of artists, they'll get a lot of free clothes, if they go to clubs, everything will be comped. If they go to restaurants, a lot of times the restaurant will comp, their meals. So they really don't have to pay for anything. So, fame affords them those things. So even with $40,000 or whatever it is, they're still living a lifestyle of multimillionaires. That's just what it is, So some people may say, well, that's the good side of it. At the end of the day is that, hey, even if you're not really seeing any real money, you're being comped, and you get to live the lifestyle of a millionaire. You got women, you got cars, you got this, you got that. You're living well. But the fact of the matter is that you're not really living well. because if you look at the average artist and the shelf life today for a hip-hop artist or a rapper or really just a black musician, period, is very, very young. I mean, we're talking about the average black entertainer, they fizzled out by the age of 40, max, 45. By the time they're 50, they can't really even draw a crowd. And that's not the same for other races and other genres of music. Obviously, we see the Rolling Stones still out there. Paul McCartney can still draw an audience. The list goes on and on and on. Now, this is not the case for every artist, because some artists came out, in the 70s and the 80s, and they were able to sustain for decades because they had a great music catalog. Or they did a lot of great writing, and it afforded them the opportunity to be able to stay true to their core fan base. So that's the upside to being a great writer, being a great performer, being a great musician. Obviously, a lot of the music today is electronic. A lot of artists don't write their own stuff. And so when those royalty accountings start being tallied, they're not going to see much money because they didn't produce the song, or if they did have something to do with it, they don't play instruments. So 9 times out of 10, they're going to sample something. And if you sample music, obviously you're going to have to pay to sample it. And oftentimes you're at the ransom of that artist or their publishing company, whoever owns the publishing to that song, and they could request astronomical amounts of money. And if that song is a hit or a potential hit, you have to pay. So that's pretty much, what a lot of artists are dealing with today. And it's not as rosy and peachy as as it's made to seem, but once again, perception dominates reality. These are the times that we live in. And so, strictly from a business standpoint, a record label, that's how they're looking at the situation. And oftentimes, a lot of young people don't understand either that when you're an artist, you're not an employee of the actual label you're signed to. You're actually, in a sense, you're a private contractor. And so you're responsible for all your own taxes, healthcare benefits, life insurance, the list goes on and on and on. And what we see oftentimes with a lot of artists, because the artists may have had some type of artistic talent, but they weren't well versed in business, or they weren't business people coming into the music business, so to speak. So oftentimes a lot of them are not great business people. And let's face it, oftentimes people are going from extreme levels of poverty to being in control of millions and millions of dollars. So, some people can handle it because, they have great teams, good people around them, and great business minds and things of that nature. But oftentimes, they don't. What we see a lot of times with artists is, a lot of artists going to jail for tax evasion, not being able to pay their taxes, because in the United States and America, you're generating, not touching, again, but generating millions and millions of dollars. The label is not responsible for those taxes, even though they're getting paid off the top. They're getting paid first. They're taking the most money off of that artist, but they're not responsible for the taxes. At the end of the day, the artist is responsible for those taxes. And oftentimes the artists, they just don't have the money. They don't have the capital. And so they find themselves in situations with taxes to where they can't meet their tax obligations based on the money that they generated. Not that they touched, not that they actually physically saw, but that they actually generated, under their name. This is what happens a lot of times, and we have to smarten up. We got to wisen up. We have to understand as a people that, the power is not in fame. True power is not in celebrity, which I hate that word personally, celebrity. The true power is not in even how much money you can generate. True power is in assets. What is your asset profile? And essentially, the great thing about assets, above and beyond everything, is that an asset really is the only thing that can generate revenue that you don't actually have to pay taxes on. So if I have a painting that I happen to pick up and purchase at an auction for $200,000, and I hold that painting for, say, 2 years. And within that 2 years, people are starting to be on the hunt for this painting I possess. And so they're going all around the auctions looking for it, and they find out that, this is the person that owns the painting. And so they request to put an offer in for the painting. Now, you owning the painting, again, you sat on this for 2 years, so the value of that went up. It's created revenue. Even though you didn't touch it, you didn't have to do anything to it. 9 times out of 10, you probably, if it's an expensive painting, you probably wrapped it up real good and you put it away in storage somewhere. And so you didn't even touch it. And what's happened is now, let's say you have buyers and they're coming to the table now and they're saying, hey, I want to purchase this painting from you. And my first offer is $300,000. So right there off the top, this painting is already in a 24-month cycle. It's already generated $100,000 of non-taxable revenue for you. Now, anytime in an auction, obviously people are going to be there bidding. So in the end, this thing can go all the way up to, $1.5, $2 million. So that would mean in 2 years, this one painting would have generated for you somewhere around, if it goes for 2 million, somewhere around 1.6 and some change. And that's all non-taxable. So this is the reason we have to understand true power. It lies not in how much revenue we can generate, taxable revenue, but the true power exists truly in the type of revenue that our assets can generate. So let me say that again. True power is not in the revenue that we can generate, but true power is in the revenue that our assets can generate. So this is very, very important. A lot of, especially black people, entertainers, let's face it, we're just not versed in these things and these matters. We're not told these things. So oftentimes you'll see with a black entertainer, the first thing they'll do is they'll go out and get a couple fancy cars, some jewelry, a few very expensive homes. And like, for instance, when they buy their homes, 9 times out of 10, they don't have good credit. Well, even more than good credit, they don't have assets. So what they're doing, they're going to do a straight 20% down payment on the property. And they may do some upgrades to the property, but 9 times out of 10, they're not really going to do it. Okay. So right off the top, right there, they're not really going to add any equity to the home. Okay. So what happens is a lot of times you have people that are coming from project housing or low income housing, and they're going into big homes, $1 million homes. And so they typically do a 30-year mortgage. And what happens is the property over time, because they haven't invested in the property, they don't have the expendable revenue being generated from assets to be able to reinvest back into the home. So what happens is the property ends up losing value because over time, it starts to go down, okay? Because they haven't invested into the actual property. So what'll happen is they'll go to try to sell the home won't sell. Again, remember, in the beginning I said the average black artist, entertainer, their shelf life is 45. So what happens when they're not generating the same amount of revenue that they were generating 10 years prior? Well, what happens is they can no longer afford that mortgage. So the home, they're going to default on it at some point. It's going to go into foreclosure. Now, the banks, they don't really mind this happening because the home, from the beginning of that loan that they took, the home was always the asset. So they know they're going to be able to resell the home again. Now, they're going to take a loss on this money that they created out of thin air from other loans, from previous loans that they made. And so now they're going to need to cover that. They're going to need to loan more money, basically to create more money. So this is what banks do. And, I'll get into kind of on a deeper level in another episode, how banks create money and what money is today and all of that stuff. But basically, banks need to create money to cover debt. And so this is all a bank cares about. It really doesn't care about the deposits in the bank. The deposits in the bank, they don't really mean anything. They're kind of just used to just shuffle money from here to there to make it seem like there's a lot of money on hand. But in reality, there's really not. One account is paying for another account, or 5 accounts are paying for another withdrawal. It's a very interesting concept, banking in America today, but it works. And so instead of knocking it, I say join it. I say educate yourself, find out the way things work, and get in and do what you need to do. Do what you got to do. This is the United States of America we're in. and for, all of the issues that we have to deal with going forward. It's still a great, great, great country. It's a great place to be. And so we have to figure that out. We have to figure out and learn how to maneuver in the system and how to make the system work for us and not find ourselves in positions where we're going to prison for tax evasion and things of that nature, based on monies that we actually generated but never actually saw. And the label's sitting there the whole time, and they've taken, 65-70% of the money generated, and they're not responsible for any of the taxes. So, and most of the taxes that they incur from their revenue generation, they actually write most of it off. So, the game is set up for most entertainers and artists to lose. And obviously, black entertainers are going to lose first because, once again, the average black entertainer, they only generate revenue. They're at the height of their career pretty much up to the age of 40, 45. And then after that, everything begins to decline. So the moral of this episode is basically, a lot of what you're seeing on TV, you're seeing on the internet in reference to entertainers, black entertainers, hip hop artists. A lot of it's smoke and mirrors. And we have to educate ourselves, and we got to be smart enough to really understand what's really going on and, get up on some real game and get in this thing and really do what we got to do to win, because that's what it's all about. So this is another episode of the Fantastically Dunn Show. We just really broke down some real good game, some real good information for everybody. And, once again, it's my pleasure to do these shows for you guys. And so my thought of the day, we're coming to that point of the show where I go into my thought of the day. And this is my thought of the day. When the smoke in the mirror grows too thick to see the truth, we are guiding our youth down a road of uncertainty and false reward. So digest that slowly and tell us what you thought of today's show. And as always, till the next time, be great, do great. Thank you, God, for loaning the world your children. Peace. I'm out.
Thank you for tuning in to the Fantastically Dunn Show. Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And comment on the show. For show notes to this episode and all past episodes, head over to www.fantasticallydunnshow.com. Until the next time, remember, you are whoever you think you are. So think you're great.